It is an honor to speak to you today. I congratulate you on your efforts to create a more inclusive society. My name is Jutta TREVIRANUS, and the title of my talk is Building an Inclusive Mindset to Navigate Our Complex Future. I'm sorry that I cannot be there in person. I hope to visit you someday. The pandemic has made us aware that we live in a complex adaptive system that is changing in very unpredictable ways. All our goals, all our ministries, departments, responsibilities are entangled and complexly connected. We cannot isolate any of our actions. They have an impact and are dependent on many other aspects of our society that are not under our control. Changes in our health systems affect our environment, which affects our economy, which affects our security, which affects our transportation. All of these systems have feedback loops. The growth of disruptive changes is viral, not linear, or amenable to careful planning or engineering. The most important lesson of the pandemic is that none of us are safe until all of us are safe. But the way we decide, plan, govern, conduct research, determine the truth, assess who and what has value, run our economy, all our fundamental systems are not built to address this lesson. Our conventional mindsets and the resulting practices are designed to reduce diversity, deny complexity, and reward and optimize the values of popularity and monetary value. Those of you working in welfare have likely experienced the impact of these priorities. This may not be a good analogy for a country with beautiful lakes rather than mountains, but from the perspective of complexity theories, our human society is hill climbing up the wrong hill. Our world is a complex terrain with many peaks and valleys, and we are currently stuck on a local optima or a small hill that won't get us out of this crisis. To find our way out of this and the next crisis, we need to reach the larger, more generous mountain. But we keep optimizing and repeating the same things. We are eroding the slope of this small local hill, making it harder for people at the bottom to ascend, and we are increasing disparity. To find the global optima out of this crisis, to make sure we all reach the more generous hill, rather than optimizing the patterns of the past, we actually need to do the opposite and climb down from our small hill and find the global optima. To do this, we need to work with the people that are at the bottom, who have the better understanding of the whole terrain, have more diverse perspectives, are more resourceful, not the people who are interested and invested in failing strategies, who are happy with their position at the top. Rather than heeding the lesson of the pandemic that none of us are safe until all of us are safe, some nations have enacted policies that falsely assume that we can sacrifice the weak and vulnerable to ensure that our society will survive and thrive. This is a misguided theory of social Darwinism that misrepresents Darwin's survival of the fittest and represents life as a winner-takes-all zero-sum game. It is in fact diversification that is the fuel of evolutionary advance. Diversification helps us expand evolutionary choices when our current strategies don't work. It was during relaxed selection, when we were free from competitive pressures, that the human race advanced. This is when we develop language. We advance when we collaborate across diversity. Predators are less adaptive and the first to face extinction. The fittest are not those with might and power, but those who have had to adapt to survive. We need vulnerability and fragility for our society to survive. We need to care for people who are fragile, and we must be prepared to be vulnerable. Fragility and vulnerability compels us to create a society that will work for us when we are vulnerable. It helps us to survive the next storm. Perfect monocultures won't survive. Social Darwinism and sacrificing the weak will leave us without adaptive choices or social safety nets. When our processes are guided by individuals who have lived experience of struggle and adversity, our systems will function in times of struggle and adversity. Technical innovation is not the answer. As a society, we have called on the power tools of artificial intelligence to do what we do, but more efficiently. Using large data sets, it optimizes past successes. But what we didn't realize is that it also optimizes past failures and discrimination. Predictive analytics and machine learning accelerate, amplify, and automate discrimination, taking us more efficiently up that local hill. I've been involved in artificial intelligence since the 80s. Over the years, I've gathered a large data set of what people need or require, what their preferences are in various designs. The only way I can plot this data is to use a multivariate scatterplot. Again and again, the pattern that emerges is what I have called the human starburst. It follows what is called a normal distribution and looks like a bursting star. 80% of the needs are clustered in the middle, taking up 20% of the space. The remaining 20% of the needs occupy the periphery, taking up the remaining 80% of the space. The needs in the middle are close together, meaning they are very similar. The needs at the periphery are far apart, meaning they are very diverse. Because of this pattern and our priority of popularity and monetary value, design works for the middle, is difficult to use as you move from the middle, and doesn't work if your needs are at the jagged edge of our human starburst. Because of how we determine truth, our empirically determined truth and evidence is highly accurate if your needs are in the middle, inaccurate if you deviate from the average, and wrong if you need things at the jagged edge. This pattern ripples through all our systems. In terms of design, design is a misfit if you're out at the outer edge, and fits you if you're in the middle. In terms of products, that especially digital products, they increase in availability, reliability, functionality, and cost if you're in the middle. But the opposite is true if you're out at the outer edge. In terms of knowledge, because we depend on statistical significance and homogeneity, and we standardize the way that we do research, and we've determined that evidence means empirical evidence based upon quantification, we know quite a bit about individuals in the middle, but we know very, very little about those individuals at the outer edge. Education is built upon ranking and conformance and standardization of learners, which makes it hard for somebody who's out at that outer edge. Work is built for replaceable workers, and even democracy, where we have reduced it to one person, one vote, and majority rules, means that the trivial needs of the majority often trump the critical needs of the few. And one thing we've come to realize is that this approach does not benefit society as a whole. Because of this, we have mass production, mass communication, mass marketing, and a popularity push. And this all reduces innovation. It leads to greater conformance, to lock-in, to reduced flexibility, reduced extensibility, and reduced resilience and responsiveness. And the strategies that we have developed for people who are out at that outer edge are also often problematic. We treat people as an afterthought. We bolt on whatever it is that they need. We segregate and make special, and therefore attach stigmas to the approaches that we develop. We treat people within that 20% as another mass, looking first at the high incidence disabilities as opposed to the needs at the very edge. And we frequently corral people into categories. One of the most common errors is to address exclusion and discrimination by dividing people into categories: blind, deaf, woman, refugee, and develop a solution or a fix for just that group. Or to develop a segregated solution specifically for, say, people with disabilities. This does not benefit our society as a whole, is not financially or technically viable, because those specialized solutions will not survive. They will be the first to be vulnerable to pressures of budget or time. And it leaves people who don't fit well into the categories or belong to multiple categories falling through the cracks and stranded at the edges. It is at the edge that we find the greatest value of inclusion. The people that are currently excluded by our systems, who can't use our designs, they present the challenges that will lead to the greatest innovation. They're also the people that will detect the weak signals. They are most vulnerable to the risks and flaws in our system. They are the canaries in the coal mine, the best stress testers that will help us be prepared for the next crisis and to avoid the greatest risks. If we design to include the needs at the edge of our human starburst, our designs will give the people in the middle room to change and grow. Because we know that at any time, when we least expect it, with the greatest probability, we will all find ourselves out at that outer edge of our human starburst. This is why, over the many decades of addressing diverse needs, learning from mistakes and failures, I propose the 3 dimensions of inclusive design. First, recognize that everyone is unique, different, and variable. Therein is our individual and collective strength. We need to understand our own unique needs and how to address them. They need to be addressed in an integrated way to be sustainable and to benefit society. Second, we need to create an inclusive process of identifying the problems, finding possible solutions, planning and evaluating. We benefit from diverse perspectives. We need to co-design with the people who have the greatest difficulty with or can't use our current systems. And we need to continuously ask, who are we still missing? Thirdly, we need to recognize that we exist in a complex adaptive system. No decision is made in isolation. We need to consider the nested and entangled systems that we are dependent on and that will feel the impact of our design decisions. And we need to strive to create benefit for all. We are still developing these 3 dimensions. But we found that designing and developing and researching things like services, policies, buildings, transportation, employment system, education and training is more successful when we heed those lessons. And rather than conventional planning that assumes we know the future, understand the full range of needs, know what is most important, we use a virtuous tornado. We start with small successes and create a system that can adapt and stretch to include more and more requirements. We iterate or go through multiple cycles to stretch our design to encompass more and more needs. And at each iteration, we ask, who are we still missing? Who does our design not work for? In this period of austerity and economic uncertainty, I can say that this will save us time and money. When we plan only for the center, we need to spend more on training, helping, fixing unexpected problems. Our system will need many adjustments and fixes. It won't adjust to inevitable changes. It will reach end of life much sooner. If we plan with the edge, it may take a little bit more time and cost a bit more at the very beginning, But our system will be adaptable, and we will save money in the medium and long term. And ultimately, our system will have a much longer life. And if this disruptive period has taught us anything, it should teach us that when we value the vulnerable edge of our human scatterplot, we will be able to adapt to change and respond to the unexpected, detect risk, achieve greater dynamic resilience and longevity, reduce disparity, and it may in fact hold the key to our survival. Thank you again for inviting me to speak here, and I would love to continue the conversation. Here are a number of the URLs